So I'm here with some very bad news for you today. I've been studying the relationship between work and families for over 25 years now, and I've come to a very depressing conclusion. There is no such thing as work-family balance. In fact, I think we have a crisis on our hands. Most of us spend so much time working that we barely have time for our families or our personal lives. Now, I'm not the only one who thinks that we're really in a bad situation. The United Nations has put work-family reconciliation at the top of their social agenda, right behind the elimination of poverty. So I'm here to tell you today that if you feel like you're struggling balancing all of the responsibilities in your life, you are not alone. I really wanted to do this talk, and I will tell you why I wanted to do the talk. A couple of years ago, I was here, and I was at a celebrity event. And after the celebrity event was over, this celebrity was surrounded by hundreds of women. And the women were all asking advice about their lives. They were crying, and they were saying they had too many responsibilities, and they didn't know what to do about their family and work lives. And the celebrity was very glib and gave very easy answers. Oh, honey, you'll be okay, that kind of thing. And that made me realize that there was a need for someone like me who actually studies these issues and who knows the research to enter the public dialogue. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to lay out how we got into this mess where work dominates our lives, and then I'm going to lay out some simple steps that each of us can do to gain some control over what is going on. 4 years ago, I actually gave a TEDx talk. And I began my talk with a vignette about women that live in a village in Mexico, in northern Mexico. And I described how they had gone from a rural lifestyle to now working in an export processing plant. And I described their long commutes and their long days. What was very interesting was that after my talk, I was surrounded by women, all of them in their early to mid-30s, and they said to me, "Why are you talking about women in Mexico? You just described my life. I get up early, I make breakfast for my family, I get in my car, I have a long commute, I work all day, I get home, I have to make dinner, I help the children with their homework, I fall into bed, and then my husband wants to have sex with me." And I don't know what to do. So I want to explain how we got into this situation where so many people are feeling so overwhelmed. Well, the first thing is, do you realize that many more of us are working? Do you realize that 72.3% of women today with children under 18 are in the paid labor force? Historically, this was the group of women that stayed home, but they're all working. Unless you think that they're all working because they want bigger handbags and bigger houses, that's not the case. In 40% of households with children, women are now the primary or the only breadwinner. So these women are working because they have to work. And in fact, when they survey women with children, it turns out only 22% of American women with children want to be working full-time. So most of these women are working because they have to work. But not only are more of us working, we're working much more. As we've been drawn into an interconnected global marketplace, there's been pressure put on businesses to become more competitive. And that pressure has been placed onto the workers. Do you realize that the average American has increased their work year by 167 hours? Do you know what that translates into? That translates into each of us working a whole extra month and whole extra week. Think about that. And you may say to me, well, that's making us more productive. That actually turns out not to be true. There are countries today that are more productive than we are, and they're actually shortening their work week and their work year. Do you know what all this stress and overwork is doing to us? It's making us sick. So, no, really, American businesses lose over $300 billion a year just based on employee absenteeism due to overwork. And the Yale Center on Stress reports that when we're stressed from all this overwork, do you know what happens to our brains? They actually shrink. All of this, of course, has an effect on our family lives. So the average American reports that they don't have enough time with their children, with their spouse, or with their friends. And on global indicators, we're ranked at the bottom of high-income countries in terms of work-family balance. Now, if you're sitting in this audience and you think, well, this doesn't really affect me, I don't have children, well, I have news for you. 65 million Americans are involved in some kind of caretaking situation. So they're either caring for an elderly family member, a disabled family member, or somebody who is ill in their families. And I'm going to give you a concrete example from my own workplace. I work with a woman, she is very smart and she is very dedicated to her job. She's not married and she doesn't have children. What CEOs term as the ideal worker, right? She goes to work at 7 every morning and she's there until 11 at night, every day. Yes, that's the kind of worker she is. But guess what? She has a mother who's 90 years old, who lives in California and who insists on living on her own. And her mother has fallen multiple times this year, and my coworker has had to drop everything and run out to California to see what is going on. So this situation can affect all of us, and the likelihood is very high that it will affect us at some point in our trajectory. Now, all of this also has a gendered component to all of this. And I want to begin with a nice little story. I was just in Athens, Greece. It was a work trip. I wasn't there to go to the beach. And on the last day, my colleagues and I took a taxi cab to the Temple of Poseidon, and our taxi driver gets into the following conversation with us. He says, Greece, very modern country. My wife, she works. She brings home good paycheck. And he gestured just like this, you know, all this money she's bringing home. And so one of my colleagues jumped right in there, and she said, oh, do you help her with the housework? And he startled, and he said, me? But I'm a man. You may laugh, yeah? But we have an unconscious bias about who should be doing what in the household. And lest you think that you're immune to this, that now in America everybody's very egalitarian, that turns out not to be true. Because when they survey you, guess what they find? They find that you still think that the best situation for children is what? It is that mom stays at home and dad goes to work. And how do we know this? Well, look at our school systems and look at our healthcare systems. So my job expects me to be there from 8 to 6. My children's school runs from 8:45 to 3. The parent-teacher conferences run from 11:30 to 2, and the dentist is open from 9 to 4. Yeah? So there's a complete mismatch between what our workplace wants and the other systems that we have in place. And I don't see any change coming soon at all, because we're actually very ambivalent, particularly when it comes to the mother's role in the household. This leads to women feeling incredibly stressed and inadequate because they feel they're not doing their best at work and they feel they're not doing their best at home. By the way, do you realize that women who work today spend more time with their children than women who were stay-at-home mothers in the 1960s? So we've really kind of increased the expectation of what we think everybody should be doing. Now, I want to switch gears a little bit because I want to take us in a different direction. We actually know what helps families. We actually know what helps working families. We know which policies work the best. The 3 policies that really support working women and men are having flexibility at your workplace, paid family leave for women and men, and quality childcare. Now, how do we know that? Well, there are some states in the United States that have implemented these policies, but actually, some of the most interesting research comes from Northern Europe. many of the Northern European countries were at 0 fertility rate, so women had stopped having children, and they surveyed the women to try to find out what was going on. And guess what's going on today? Which is when women are given the choice between a career and having children, guess what it is they choose? They choose a career. Once these policies have been put into place, which has happened in countries like in Germany, in Sweden, in Finland, Iceland, guess what? Women start having children and the fertility rate goes back up. So I want us to switch gears now and talk a little bit about what you, by the way, these policies are not happening here for a while, and there's a complicated set of reasons for why they're not happening. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about what you can do on a daily basis to help you gain control over your life. The first thing is, I think you really have to kind of figure out a life purpose, and I think that that's very important. I keep reading that your job is supposed to be your passion. For most of us, our job is not our passion. Our job pays the bills. But that in its own way can be your purpose. For example, 8 out of 10 women report that earning an income makes them feel good, it makes them feel independent, and it connects them to others. The second thing that you can do is, I really think you need to create an action plan. You need to step back, assess what's working in your life, what's not working, and then you need to make a plan so that you take some control. Do you realize that when you feel a little more in control of a situation, your brain releases dopamine and you start to feel better in general? So, I'll give you a practical example from my own life. I have all these boxes downstairs, and whenever I see them, I get very upset. I've started unpacking 2 of the boxes every weekend, and all of a sudden, that small step has started to make me feel better. So you're taking some control. The third is you need to prioritize. You need to prioritize with your time, and you need to prioritize with your money. In terms of time, is it really that important that the children pick up the playroom every single night and you expend all this energy on that? My daughter heard me discussing this, and she was thrilled. She said, "Oh, it means we don't have to clean up anymore." No, that wasn't the point of it at all. But it's not like it has to be a daily thing where you're expending all this energy getting upset about everything. Better use some of that energy and exercise and do something for your health. The fourth is you really need to outsource some of your household activities. And if you can't afford to outsource them, then work out some sort of barter system with your neighbor or a teenager, just so you reclaim a little bit of time for yourself. I have been struck by how many young women I know who've been getting ill. And it really has stayed with me that everybody's so overworked these days that they can't cope anymore. And then it's reflected in how their bodies react to all of this. I keep reading that you're supposed to disconnect from your technology. However, that's, for someone like me, that's virtually impossible. One, I'm expected to be available, my job expects this, and two, just psychologically, I can't disconnect in that way. But what you can do is you can disconnect for short periods of time. You can take 2 or 3 hours every evening and put your phone and your email away, and even that little break helps you. The fifth one is, and I really believe in this, is you need to reward yourself a little bit every day. For example, after I put my children to bed every night, I read for 30 minutes. It's something I look forward to. It's part of my routine now. It makes the day more bearable. My last piece of advice is the most important one, which is it is incredibly important to create a social support network, both at work and at home. The minute you begin talking to others, you realize that others are in the same boat. They have the same struggles that you do. You realize as human beings, we're hardwired to connect to others. The results of a major study came out last year. They followed men for 75 years to see what factors contribute to successful aging. Do you know what they found? In the end, it doesn't matter how much money you had. It didn't matter what kind of family you came from. It didn't even matter what your job was. The one thing that really mattered was that you had supportive social connections. The men who had those connections were the ones who aged well. We have evolved to belong, to be in groups. Groups have always given us safety. You know, in prehistoric times, you needed the group to keep from being eaten by the tiger. Today, you need the group to keep you from being eaten by your job. So I want you to forget about the idea of work-family balance, but instead think about blending work and family. Sometimes you're going to put more time into your job. Sometimes you're going to put more time into your work. I read a lot of biographies, and I've really learned, in the end, the people who are successful are the ones who persevere and the ones who connect to others. So my advice for you today is go out there, build your social support network, because you are not alone.